What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. All right, everyone, this is Dr. Mel. Welcome back to the Project Lioness podcast. Today, I am super excited to welcome another special guest near and dear to my heart, Dr. Alex Mosley. And her husband came into my life. Gosh, Alex, was it like 2018-ish time?
Yeah, I feel like before, well, yeah. I feel like I've known you before that, but I'd say that's when we became friends.
We've probably lived many past lives, let's be real.
Yeah.
I remember Alex came into my life, her and her husband, Clay, who I love, who has helped me tremendously in my business. I know has helped Michael in his business, my brother. And I wanted to bring Alex on because not only is she a wellspring of knowledge when it comes to the nervous system and the brain and parenthood and, relationship dynamics, but also just what it's like to have a life-altering experience, aka birth. So we might get into that. This conversation is going to be fun, y'all. So we invite you to grab a drink, grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your water. You can check out the show notes of all the roles that Alex plays, but she is a wife, a mother, a friend, a doctor, a continuous seeker of knowledge and wisdom, and really an advocate for people living in their most empowered state when it comes to whatever is inspiring to you, whether that is being a parent, a mom, an entrepreneur. And she's become one of my closest friends, and I love her so very much. She's also a Project Lioness graduate. So we'll talk about that today and how Project Lioness has really impacted her own personal journey and alignment and just really stepping into the powerful, badass lioness that she is. So without further ado, Alex, welcome to the show.
Yay. Thank you. That was a great intro.
I'm just kidding.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff, off my heart. I don't have to even read your
love it.
bio. I know people start the show with like reading the bio, but I feel like there's something to like whatever's on your heart in that moment. And you and I being close friends and clients of each other's work is really, really special. If you guys haven't checked us out on YouTube, we got some cool, colorful backgrounds.
Yeah.
Alex looks awesome with her amazing geometric stuff. It's very on brand. So what's life like for you right now in 2024? We'll get into, by the way, you guys, we'll get into like probably a lot of different topics, but Alex and I are both really passionate about just human consciousness.
Yes.
But I think it's important to like hear like, where are you at right now as an entrepreneur and a mom? And I know that's a loaded question, but like, what's alive for you in this moment?
Take another deep breath before I answer. I right now am doing something I never thought I would, which is not practicing chiropractic.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to get to this point. And, there's a lot in between and how we got to this point. But where I'm at right now is getting to just exercise some new muscles, some different skills that I'm really enjoying doing, working with Clay, my husband. He's, for those of y'all who don't know, he's in marketing. He's a marketing consultant. And so he has his own marketing company, and he's really just needed like a right-hand person for a long time. So I got to come in as kind of background operations. I'm calling myself the chief people officer.
You're great at that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I've always loved, storytelling and marketing and helping people kind of identify what makes them special. And so I'm getting to really do that in Dripify with his clients, our clients, and and doing a lot of like background operations, which was always so difficult for me as a doctor in practice. You know, you have to wear so many
Mm.
hats. And I felt like that was always something that fell through the cracks. But now that I'm not having to be the woman, I get,
Hmm.
you know, I'm like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I can do that. And I'm actually really enjoying it.
I love that. Something that I love about you is how much of a like cheerleader or supporter you are, not only of yourself, but like other people's vision and mission. And I think that's your ability to like see what's possible for them because
Mhm.
you've learned to like own it in yourself. And what I'm also hearing is you went through a big transition. And, we could go way back to like the beginning of when it all started. I always joke with good guests, like, where do you want to start? You want to start at birth? You want to start like
Right.
5 years ago? But something I've seen in you and appreciate about you is like the dedication to make the pivot for your family and your values. And that's something I've noticed with the guests here, with listeners, is that there's been a lot of transition energy, whether it's the ability to shift jobs, the ability to shift how you're doing entrepreneurship, the ability to maybe step out of something that you built, which takes a lot of courage, and actually be like, you know what? Family and these people in my life who I love and freaking gave birth to, like, are my highest values. So I'm curious if that feels like a maybe aligned place to start. What's allowed you to make that transition? Because it sounds like you're a chiropractor, which I know that, but the audience, you were a chiropractor for a long time, and something shifted in the last couple of years, and you've stepped into a new role and a new way of healing. So tell us about some of that journey and like what that was like.
Oh, I'm still sorting through a lot of the feelings
Of course.
because they were really big. They were
Hmm.
really big feelings and not good feelings, you know. I think for me, when I'm in such a state of just avoiding things that I know I need to do. But it's like almost like we talked a lot in Project Lioness about self-sabotage, and that was so
Hmm.
helpful for me in reframing what it actually is, right? It's just what it actually is you're having to do things that are not in alignment with what you actually value. So you're not
Yeah.
doing them. But what it felt like in practice was I was just avoiding. I would just avoid a lot of things that I knew needed to be done to help me progress or move forward or help more people or be on bigger stages, more stages, whatever the case. And I just wasn't doing it. And so it was a lot of kind of those recognizing like this is just becoming more and more difficult to even show up.
Mm.
Not, to do the bare minimum became such a chore. And it was something that I absolutely loved. It was something that I lived for. And so there was a huge switch there of just trying to figure out like why is this? What is this? Like where is this coming from?
Mm.
And it got to be just very apparent that the way I was doing things, how my practice was running and kind of, I was a part of a group that had very high standards. And I'm a type of person that I'm a team player. I absolutely want to uphold the standards. And it just became obvious to me that I was having trouble doing that.
Yeah.
Because I would just rather pull teeth. I don't know. Like
Right.
it would just became something just like, I don't care. Like why can't I want to do it this way? I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to do it at all. And so it just became obvious that it was time to really take stock of what my life looked like and what I was putting energy to. Because, yeah, when you have a kid and you enter into this new transition of becoming a mom, you're the capacity you have changes.
Absolutely.
And so then it's like, okay, well, where the energy that I do have to be creative, I really want to be jealous and I really want to be mindful and intentional about where I'm spending that time,
Hmm.
because it needs to fill, if it fills me up, then it's going to fill up everybody else that I'm taking care of. And the people that I need to take care of really needs to narrow down because I don't have the bandwidth to do it on a big capacity.
Right.
Um, I don't know if that answered the question. I feel like I just gave a super long
I mean,
answer.
no, that was beautiful. And this is, and you all know who are like listeners in the audience, this is meant to be conversational and not necessarily interview-esque. But I really love what you're saying, Alex. And what I'm hearing is like this ability to recognize, okay, I could keep climbing this like way I think I should do it, like the imperative values or the injected or the imperative languaging, right? Like I should do this, I
Mm-hmm.
have to do this, I must do this versus like, what do I actually want? Like,
Right.
what inspires me? And I think it can be so easy. You and I were both athletes growing up, students and that like achiever, right? Because you're a three, you're a
Yep.
three,
Oh
I'm a
yeah.
three as well. And it can be, and this is nothing against threes. I think there's ways to achieve that also are in alignment and fulfilling of your values. But I think what you're speaking to that a lot of people could resonate with is this, you know, it can be easy to just keep like hitting the bar because you think you should versus like, is that actually fulfilling? And am I
Mm-hmm.
just living into the injected values of my parents or subordinates or authority figures? And I think there comes a point where if it's in alignment with your values, keep following that. And if not, your body's going to give you these feedback loops. And back to what you said before, the self-sabotaging as a myth, really, you guys, it's what Alex is speaking to and what we talk about in Project Linus is it's really your ability to come back to equilibrium. And so an example of this is like you work hard all day and like you feel really good about yourself and like you're a little bit prideful and you're high on your maybe ego. And so you sense like, oh, I'm a little bit high. Subconsciously, you might go for like, well, I'm gonna go out and have a bunch of drinks,
Right.
or I'm gonna go like binge, or I'm gonna go do this thing to balance out the energy. So it's not necessarily a self-sabotage, but rather you got a little bit inflated in a way that you're seeking these behaviors to actually balance you out. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily you're self-sabotaging, but rather they call it, and I would look this up if you're curious about principles and philosophy, is the licensing effect,
Mm,
where
that's
you
right.
think you did something really good. And so deep down, this overly, sway to the pride triggers a level of shame of like, oh, well, I worked really hard, so I'm just going to have a drink or something like that. And this is not to say anything bad about alcohol, but I think there comes a point when you're not following your values, albeit for you, like being a mom, being a wife, right? We can go into these like what we think are self-sabotage versus am I just choosing actions that aren't top priority for me? And that can
Mm-hmm.
be really hard and takes a lot of courage to be like, because you started your practice in COVID, you guys, by the way, like she built
Yeah.
up her practice in fucking COVID, mind you, which requires a whole nother set of strategy and skill and maybe slight trauma response, right? But like, I think it's really important to speak to this of like having the courage to pivot, even if the rest of the world says, but you look like you're on top, but
Right.
inside you're just like, fuck, man, I'm not fulfilled. I'm struggling. So I don't know if there's anything more to add to that, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things you said that are really important for people to get, where it's not about self-sabotage. It's about conscious and subconscious equilibrium to get you to come back to neutral so you don't get overly shameful or overly prideful in what it is you're pursuing in your life.
Yes, this is why I took Project Lioness, right? And went through that because the way you explain it, I'm like, yes, that's it. That one. You
I
said it
got you.
right.
Hey, you're on it. You're on it, my friend. You're on it.
For me, it was all around finances. And that's how it's always
Mm-hmm.
been. Like I grew up seeing mismanaged finances and grew up on with an outer projection of the Brady Bunch. Perfect,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful family and complete inner dysfunction, right? And inner chaos. And letting anybody know about the chaos was absolute betrayal of the clan, of the tribe,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so when things get really hard, for me, it was like, right. And we're overachievers. So it's all about success. And I could climb that ladder until the day that I died and I'd be successful at it. But inside I'd already be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do something right, like you get a new client or you have a just a great day, like you said, and it's like, oh my gosh, like look how good, look how amazing.
Yeah.
And then I would go like impulse buy something, or I would
Yes.
shop and I'm going to go buy this. I'm going to go get a pair of shoes. I'm going to go, which is, like you said, not bad. Like there's nothing bad about the cookie, right? Or the buying the thing, but I was doing it subconsciously without any intention behind it as a way to just relieve some of that dopamine, to like level
Mm-hmm.
myself out. And
That's
so it
it.
was really recognizing patterns like that, and being ready to not live that way anymore. Like having it
Yeah.
just scream so loud that it was
Oof.
like you said, it takes a lot of courage, and it does. And at the same time, for me, I've always been the person, when you feel backed into the corner, and it's like I would much rather pivot than do the same thing. To me, that
Yeah.
is, I don't know. I know how people do that. I know people who do that, and I love people who do that, who tend to just kind of repeat patterns and patterns. For me, it's always been the moment I see it, the moment I get it. It's like when you learn something, you can't unlearn it. And
Yeah.
so then if I'm choosing to like do something that I know isn't in my best interest, I just don't have that in my DNA. I don't know. But that's how it
Yeah.
feels anyway. And
Yeah.
so it takes courage for sure. And I think it also takes courage to not do it,
Right.
to stay in the same place.
It's like a paradox,
It
you
is.
know?
It's like, is that what okay, because we love polarities, right? So
Hmm.
what is the opposite of courage? If it is it fear? Because you can be scared and have courage.
Right.
So what do you think the opposite is? If it takes
I think
courage
it's
to stay
apathy.
and it takes courage to leave?
I think it's
Apathy.
apathy
Mm.
because fear can also put you into action. It's a really good
Mm-hmm.
question. You're becoming, Alex is a podcaster too, by the way, or sometimes podcaster, as she said in her
Sometimes.
bio. She's a part-time podcaster. I just love having a side note. I love having other like entrepreneurs or podcasters or people who do this because then like all of a sudden I'm the one getting interviewed, which is fun. It's a fun flip. But I think I reflect on that too because fear is not bad. It's just how do you
Mm-hmm.
navigate it? Like fear is never going to
Right.
go away. You're going to have fear in entrepreneurship. You're going to have fear as a mother. You're going to have fear as a wife. You're going to have fear in any archetype you play, in any role that you play. But I think the opposite of courage is apathy, where you do nothing. Because fear, a lot of people act out of fear and only
Mm-hmm.
fear. Like it
Right.
never becomes, it becomes more of a push out of like your brainstem, which is important. That can serve. If there's a saber-tooth tiger chasing you, you better feel a fear response to get the fuck out of there. But eventually, you've got to let your prefrontal cortex come online to pull you into a vision and a mission for your life and determine what matters to you as far as your top priorities. But for me, if I were to answer your question on your podcast, I would say the opposite of courage is apathy, where you're just kind of numb and you don't do anything
Mm-hmm.
different, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is at that, like you said, requires a level of consciousness of patterns because you can be conscious of your pattern and still not do anything. Whereas some people, I think they live into the pattern and they're not even aware of it, right? But I think it's because they haven't been taught how to listen to the subtle cues that their physiology is attempting to like, hello, like tap on the
Mm-hmm.
shoulder. It's time to pay attention. So,
Right.
what's the opposite for you?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense because I'm thinking of this one example of somebody that I know. She's kind of stuck in this marriage. She has two little kids. She needs to get out. She's choosing not to because if she would, her husband and his parents have endless money, and she's terrified of he would get joint custody.
Mm,
There's no way she could prove, he shouldn't get to see his kids,
right.
basically. And so she's terrified of what it would look like if she had to not have them 50% of the time. They're
She
too little.
perceives, I guess, yeah, that's a classic example of perceiving more pain than pleasure, more drawbacks than benefits for the choice.
Yeah. And so the pain would be not being able to be with her kids every single day and having something happen to them that was out of her control. And so she wants to wait till right now they're like they're little. They're like toddlers. Wait
Yeah.
until they're older and able to communicate more, assertively and be able to tell her with more information, I guess you could say, um, be able to communicate more effectively.
Yeah.
And so that's fear. And I also see courage in that decision because
True.
I can't say that I would make a different decision if I was in her
Yeah.
position.
I think it can be a both and.
I think it can be a both and I think if you're choosing to stay either way, choosing a choice uh, as you're feeling fear, like in spite of it's not in spite of fear, you're feeling fear and you're choosing whatever, that's a conscious choice.
True.
I think that's the kicker. It has to be something you're like, okay, I recognize the pros, I recognize the cons of either of these, and I'm more willing to live with this one. So
Yeah.
I'm going to make this choice. And other people may perceive it as I'm a coward or whatever.
That's true. I think that's a good, just to pinpoint what you said. It's important to not like project our values onto others or like what we think people should do, which I was listening to a mentor of mine talking about how the values that have been injected upon us from our parents most of the time, or authority figures, teachers, leaders, priests, preachers. That's kind of what DeMartini says. Um, when we feel that injection of not being able to live our value into our values, but into other people's values, we will project it more onto others. So I think it's important to be like, you know what? We don't maybe know the whole story of why someone may stay. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps she's like, all right, I see the benefits and the drawbacks of staying. I see the benefits and the drawbacks of leaving. And right now, my top value is my kids' development. And I think we can easily be like, but you should leave. And that's a version of our own projection when we might not see the whole picture, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people will, like you said, the more you can see both sides, that allows you to live in that conscious autonomy of it, and at least just be aware of, in the future, there may be a wake up call or there may not. I don't know. That's an interesting thing that I always try to consider is like, how much of the story am I seeing and how much of it am I actually not seeing? Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes it's here's what I love about us. It's like it's
Go
like
on.
just keep talking. Is that we and specifically whenever we're like, okay, let's play this out. When I'm stuck or, whatever the case, you're stuck. Not that you come
Mhm.
to me all the time, but I know I come to you. It's like all of there's
Oh,
all of
that'll happen after the podcast. Alex will coach me. I've got some shit I got to work through.
there's all these different kind of realities, right?
Hmm.
And they kind of are all true. And there's also a kind of an objective reality of like, well, this is true. This story you're making up, right? Because we're made of all these parts, and
Hmm.
each part it has a seat at the table. And my anxiety is telling me this, and my confidence is telling me this, and my intuition is telling me this, and all of those things are true. And there's still like this objective reality of like, well, what's the actual evidence that's going on around you? Like, what can you actually see and feel and hear and what have you actually experienced? Like what has actually happened?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I love it because it's very much like no judgment because all of these things are true. And also you get to make a decision because there really is one thing that's kind of the true right thing.
Hmm.
And
And I
it's
think, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and it's like teaching people, teaching yourself to kind of go through that process and sift through that process so we get down to what that is.
Yeah. Which takes time, right? It's not just
Yeah.
like, Alex, tell me what I should do. And the truth is, the only person who's going to know that is you. But you have to first choose to have a relationship with yourself. And as you said, our self is really a lot of different parts our physical self, our social self, our emotional self, our mental self, our spiritual self, right? There's all these different And if you guys haven't read No Bad Parts,
Mm.
similar to like IFS, internal family systems, which I think is a beautiful connection to like the breakthrough work. But um, it's important to look at all those parts and ask like what's true now, because what was true back then may not be, permission to change, right? That's what I was going to say, is permission to like change your mind based on new data, based on new
Yes.
information.
Let's
And
normalize that,
yeah,
please.
and I know I want to go back to like your transition, Alex, if that is okay with you. Like you had to collect a significant amount of data or receive a significant amount of feedback loops to be like, you know what? I'm leaving practice. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and chiropractors, and I see a lot of people just like really unfulfilled because maybe they have a fear of like, if I leave, is the profession going to shame me? Or
Mm,
if I choose to change how I serve people or help people heal in different forms, am I going to get judged for that? So I'm curious, like, how did you pivot? How did you collect the data and like eventually just be like, you know what? I've got to surrender to this transition. Otherwise, like the pain became too great. Or
hmm.
maybe the vision over here became greater as well. I'm curious your journey in that transition.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe if you want to speak, we were talking about motherhood too. That was like a pinpoint I made, is like you're also a mom who has gone through versions of challenge and celebration with that too.
yeah. I love that you.
Just
I,
talk about all of it. Ready, go.
I'm ready to go. I'm like, I'm gonna make some notes.
I know. I've got a
I used to
notebook
my
in front
head
of me too.
making some notes. I love that you use the term data points because I'm such a nerd,
Mhm.
and the type of chiropractor I was, is an upper cervical chiropractor, which is we love our tools. I can't
Very
really
data.
can't do anything without my tools.
Yep.
And obviously my hands, but like I got some objective tools. And so I love data. And so I love that you use that term. So what data did I collect? It was collected over a span of over a year, couple years for sure. Because I think it got put in motion in pregnancy
Mm.
when I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And when Georgia, my daughter, was born, she was a catalyst, if we're going to talk about it in chemical terms.
Yeah.
She absolutely changed the entire equation. Her just this little high energy walking nervous system, just
Mm-hmm.
completely revolutionized my life. And there's a before and an after. We've talked about you taught me this concept, Mel, actually about I think we call them catalysts, like catalyst and titration, and like
Mm.
how we
Catharsis.
catharsis, that's it, catharsis and titration, and how
Yep.
we have these really big events in our life that how I describe it is like they create a definitive before and after. Like
Mm-hmm.
you now look at your life and in this timeline, and there's life before the event happened, or the thing happened, or you attended, or you did or whatever, and now there's life after, and it's
Yep.
different. You're different. And for me, that was a complete cathartic event. And so I was a different person. There's a before and after. And so the data collection really went into overdrive
Mm.
because of the energy changes. My energy was just being spent on figuring out this new little human, and I have such compassion for myself now, but when I was going through it, oh my gosh, I think I just thought every baby was kind of like a textbook, and like this is what they do, and that's how we learn about them, right? That's how we learned in
Right.
school. And I took care of a ton of kids. I love taking care of kids, and they were
I'm
all
like, this
like
is easy,
kids
man.
on the spectrum, yeah, like or just kids with like just very neurodiverse, like helping them live the highest quality of life they can, sort of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was used to kind of seeing, I thought I really knew like what was normal and abnormal, and not saying abnormal is something's wrong with abnormal, but just
Right.
Is there an issue with the processing and receiving and how the brain's developing? And can we help fill in those gaps? And then what does life look like? Right.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely believe every kid is born perfect the way that
Yeah.
they are. My only role was to help that perfection
Express itself.
express itself. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And so Georgia, I had such a learning curve because she was not like the typical what I expected. That's not how it went. And so
It wasn't?
it was,
What?
right? I didn't create a fantasy around this postpartum
Not at all.
motherhood journey
Not
at
at
all.
all.
Not even
No.
a little bit.
No.
Didn't even enter the picture. And so I naturally, right, was catapulted into this nightmare.
You were humbled.
It's so humbled.
Side note, by the
And
way, you guys, what Alex is speaking to, and you've probably heard me use this like this duality of nightmare fantasy, where any fantasy we create in any form of life will actually attract the nightmare to humble us and get us to break our own addiction to the fantasy. So whatever fantasy or nightmare you have from the past will project into the future or vice versa. So this is where setting high expectations or having fantasies or fantasy vision boards can be really humbling, and you'll attract actually the opposite, because that's the law of magnetism, to get you to humble yourself and balance yourself out, because the universe is always approximating equilibrium. Anyway, continue.
thank you. Love that.
Boom.
It's
Boom.
exactly how that went for me. Played out 100% like that.
Yep.
And so just trying to figure out her and that she's not a textbook, she's actually a human. Go figure, right? She has a
Wow.
personality right out the womb. Like she is a little person with preferences and a temperament and a whole little being,
Little universe
little universe.
with
Yes.
her own set of values.
100%. And it was wild to learn that. And so as much as I knew, I feel like it worked against me. I had to unlearn a lot of it to just learn how to really running a business. You're in your masculine state a lot. You're like we were talking about data
Yeah.
points. Like, let me make my spreadsheet. Let me update this. Let me go speak. Let me go network. Let me go market myself and be the coach and be the guide and tell people, how to do this, how to do that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
very masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also took me a while to like kind of flip that into my intuition and
Mm.
not trying to collect so much data from a I don't know, like an intellectual
Like a
standpoint, but
mind.
just to kind of receive the data from like a body, like a somatic, like
Yeah.
what is she just telling me? Like, stop trying to run it through like this Rolodex of like all these potential things, but just
Where
like
was that diagram in that textbook?
right,
I don't
exactly.
remember that chapter, versus like, whoa, I'm totally out of the present moment of like being here with my breath and my body and like receiving through our
Mhm.
soma versus like our mind.
Yes, like why is she crying? Oh, could it be this? I just changed her diaper. Could it be? Was she hungry? I just fed her. Like, is she sick? Like, what is she about? Versus just like, pick her up. Well,
Mm.
pick her up. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Like
Ancient wisdom.
maybe that
Yeah.
would work.
I don't know. Maybe touch your child.
Yeah, like maybe just go hold her and like relax.
Uh,
Thumbs
did you
up.
find the moments that you would connect to that with her was like a part of you was like, oh, I actually need to be like hold my like reparent myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how long have I, because I hear this from a lot of parents and clients I work with, is like, oh, actually these kids are just a mirror of parts of me that I'm learning to reparent and love. And like, yeah, maybe I need to like hold myself and breathe and like just like and like extend that energy to this being that's like half of you. Did you have a lot of
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. And I think that was part of this biggest, we're talking about data points being collected. These were huge data points to me because I grew up with busybody parents who are still busybodies.
Oof.
And so you
Thanks,
don't just like
boomers.
right, like
We
you
love
you
you
don't just like
and
do nothing. Like I remember getting in trouble. We were on a vacation. This came up recently, actually. By the way, just PSA, like I have a fantastic family. We all live in the same town electively. We're very close. I hang out with my parents on the weekends, like love my family.
Are your parents going to
Um,
listen to this podcast?
maybe, I don't know. So, hey, parents, I love
What's
you.
up? What's up? I love your parents too. I love your family.
I have these conversations with my parents about like, you know, because I'll do things differently than they did. And so we've had to have
Hmm.
these conversations of like, I love you. You didn't do anything wrong. I just have this information now. So I'm going to do it like this.
Hmm.
Right. Um,
Which is actually very normal, by the way, you guys. Like your kids and you, us being children of someone, because we all came out of a vagina. That's like we're here. We all came out of a vulva.
hey,
So
yo.
you have a parent somewhere, whether you were adopted or they're no longer here. You came out of a vulva. Congratulations. However, that which we have not owned and healed in ourselves, we will actually transfer to the next generation as a mirror back to us to learn to love it. So oftentimes our children or our parents have exact opposite values to balance out the family dynamic. And the same with your relationships too, which is the saying like opposites attract. And you really don't want to marry someone who's just like you because relationships are meant to help us grow, whether it's your partner or your family or your children. Like it's all a symbiotic relationship, and existing the duality is what creates the whole. So just a caveat there so you can like really get this for yourself and the importance of that.
Yeah, totally. And so I remember I remember being on vacation and the fourth Harry Potter had just come out. And so I waited to get it
Oh
and
yeah.
I was deep into it and I wouldn't play on the vacation. I wouldn't come out. We were on a cruise. It's like the one cruise we went on. And I wanted to stay in my room and just read the book. And I remember getting in so much trouble for reading them. You can't read on vacation, and just how funny is that?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
You're
so
like, these
things
are
like
my
that.
values, bro.
Right.
And by the way, I don't know if you can see it on you, Alex, but don't you have a Harry Potter tattoo?
I don't have a Harry Potter
Oh, I
tattoo.
thought you had a Harry Potter tattoo.
I'm looking like maybe I have one.
I have
I
one.
have like seven.
You do love
One of
Harry
these
Potter
could be
though.
Harry Potter. Yeah, I do love Harry Potter.
Maybe I like hop the timeline and I
I'll
was
go
like,
get one before this podcast airs to make it true.
okay, well, I need to come with you. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to get like a yin yang, deconstructed yin yang like down my arm. So we'll go get
Ooh,
tattoos.
that sounds
Anyway,
fun.
yeah, let's do it.
Um,
Because you were
anyway,
reading and your
so I was
parents
reading,
were
I got in
like,
trouble because my parents were like, you can't read on vacation. Come be with us and do things. And so, right, I am doing something anyway.
just not in the values that you want me to live into, right?
Right. And so, um, that was part of the big, so becoming a mom, we were talking about how, oh, just pick her up and breathe and like relax and don't do anything. Yeah. Growing up with these busy bodies and I describe it as as Chihuahua energy. It's how I describe
Mm,
it when I
yeah.
feel it in myself. It's like a Chihuahua running around inside of me, and there's little like energy bolts coming off of me, and what I hear is,
I'm getting stressed just thinking about it.
and so I feel the Chihuahua energy, and like I'll feel it now when I'm like, Clay, and my husband will be like, what are you doing? When I'm like, we have like nothing to do, or I'm rushing. I
Yeah.
rush. And we don't have to be anywhere by any certain time. But I'm like, let's go. Why isn't this? Well, can you put on our shoes? Like, oh, I have to go do this, blah, blah, blah. And he's
Mm.
like, breathe, and just like,
He's like, you American culture people, like, you got to chill the fuck out.
right. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so just even somatically recognizing that Chihuahua energy that I have inside of me, recognizing where it comes from, and then those data points where that is the energy I felt every single time I had to go to practice, every single
Wow.
time. And then it would get heightened whenever we would have like our group team meetings or whenever we were doing group things, or there was just like this heightened performative state where I just was so not in it, but I was in it, I was a
Hmm.
part of it, but like kept recognizing like this super intense, like Chihuahua energy. And I can't have that Chihuahua energy in my regular life because it
Mm,
hurts my kid. Literally,
right.
she's like crazy sensitive. And so anytime I'm like, to this day, now she's 2, and like, I can't, rushing her is not a good idea. She lets me know that very vocally. And it hurts us both in the end. And so it's like, okay. So those were really big data points of that transition of being okay with closing my practice. And I did have to confront all those thoughts of judging myself back when I was first starting out. And like I knew women who became moms who then dropped out of practice, and I judged the shit out of them. I was like, oh my God, you must not love chiropractic enough. Or like,
Yeah.
oh, you must not be successful enough, or whatever, right? Just like
Uh,
I call them when I was a childless asshole. That's what I call those comments
totally.
because I had so many of them too. Like, oh my God, my
Like,
kid's
oh,
not
you
going to
must
watch
not be work.
TV.
Yeah. Or
My kid's not
like,
going to have plastic toys. My kid's not, whatever the case. And then it's just like, oh my God, all these comments,
my kid's
all
not.
these thoughts
Yep.
that I had. You're the perfect parent until you have kids, for sure. And
That's a good one. That's a quote.
and so all those prior judgments like came to the forefront of like I had to confront them about myself. Like,
Mm,
do I not love practice enough? Like, do I not love chiropractic enough? Do I not love my patients enough? Am I not successful enough? Like all these kind of like really intense just judgments that I have had of other people are now coming out about myself. And so having to kind of go through those stories and process and reconcile what actually was true, what actually was not true, and what was not probably not true about these other women too,
yeah.
you know?
That
And
which we judge in others is a part of us that we have yet to learn to love.
yeah, big time, right? Because it was such a fear of like, yeah, like just all those things. Are people going to think those things about me?
And
I
it's
thought they were
really
about
like,
other people. So is now
yeah.
are people are now going to think those things about me, that I'm a quitter, or I
Yep.
can't hack it, or I can't work hard enough, or I'm not successful, right? And
Yeah.
as an overachiever, that's like, oh my
That's how you learn to
gosh,
get
the
love.
worst thing, right? That's how you
And
learn. None
not
of it
even,
actually matters.
yeah. And not even like love, like attention. Because
Mm-hmm.
love is like unconditional love. Like I love you regardless versus like we meaning because I can speak to this too, being an overachiever in some capacity, like attention or validation was like we distorted that into love, which was not necessarily like the true, deep, profound human love. Like I fucking love you, even though I maybe not don't agree with you or I don't see eye to eye. Like I still love you as like a
Mm-hmm.
brother, as a sister on this planet. Yeah.
And that was another set of data points. I had to make sure that my relationships would not be that they would still be there,
Yeah.
even if I quit practice or quit my group, right? Or quit my
Wow.
team. Like I definitely was worried that, because a lot of times I forget who said this. I don't know if it was like Socrates or Plato or something, but it was like, tell me if you know this. I feel like you probably would. Like types of friendships, and there's like friendship out of use. Like
Mm,
you have a mutual use or something for one another, you're reaching something. Friendships out of proximity, like coworkers. Like you wouldn't normally be friends, but you're always in the same place, and so now you're friends, right? And then you have like true genuine friendships which take commitment and effort. And and I was worried that friendships that I felt like I wanted to put effort into, maybe it was just a friendship out of proximity. And so
mm.
so I was my friends were more that I'd had
Or
forever.
accessibility. Like,
Yes.
oh, this is easy. So let's just,
Mm-hmm.
this requires less effort. So let's just like, yeah.
Right. And so then it came with the acceptance of people that want you to be their friend and you want to be their friend, y'all will remain friends because that's how
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
And, we do this a lot in Project Lioness, and it's like, well, where does that show up for you as true? Right? Like, and that I did that a lot too, was what do you love about this? And how can you continue to serve in this way that's just not here?
Yeah.
Right.
Changing the form.
Yeah, changing the form because you were one of the first people I told you when you and Ben came for Clay's birthday
Hmm.
in December. And I remember you were one of the first people that I spoke it to out loud that do you remember that?
I
I remember
do.
I like whispered it to you in my living
Yeah.
room.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. And,
And I, yeah.
complete trust and like, sacredness in that friendship of like, I'm here to just be a space holder. And, when I think we can find the one person we can share it and like speak it and trust them to not like go spread it like drama, that can elicit courage to be like, oh shit. Like we can still be friends, we can still be connected, and like I love you no matter what form.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful place to be. So anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, I do remember that. I was actually just looking at those pictures from Texas. I'm like, get me out of fucking Minnesota right now.
It's 60 degrees here today. Come
It's
on
cold for you
over.
guys. It's cold for you. Yeah, you sure
Um,
that was December 20. And let me just, so you guys, this will definitely be a two-part series. So
oh
I'm gonna
yeah,
like,
sorry. We're
no,
talking.
no, no, no. This is good.
Okay.
But I'm gonna like say this out loud. Check out part two. We're gonna continue the episode, but check out part two. This is also me like recording Mel, go to this time in the 45 minutes in and edit it and then go forward. But check out part two because there's a lot more to share and a lot more depth here. So keep going. So that was like December, was it 20?
2021, because that was his 40th birthday. No,
Wow.
2022,
2022.
because Georgia was a year old.
Yes.
That
Okay.
was my month
That
of hell when we have our anniversary and Georgia turned 1 and Clay turned 40 and I planned a massive surprise birthday party for him. And then we had Christmas and then we had extended family Christmas in Little Rock, Arkansas and New Year's. And I was like, I've lost 5 years of my life.
yeah, you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. But yes, I remember you were one of the first people I told and you did exactly that. You were like, okay, tell me more. And
Mhm.
and that was kind of it. You didn't offer it really anything and I didn't need anything. It was just kind of like and I'm sure you sensed that, like me saying it out loud, was like
You didn't
such a
need
big
any
deal.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It
think
was
that's
such a big
something.
deal. Not yet anyway, but yeah.
Well, and I think that's important in any friendship or any relationship is just the way I don't know the uh philosopher of that, but I have heard similar
Mm,
adages to like you have the 3 minute friend, you have the
mm,
3 hour friend, you have like the 3 week friend, and then you have the friends that literally transcend decades in space time. Where it feels like no matter how much space and time exist between, it's like you never left each other's company,
mm-hmm,
right? And
mm-hmm.
like I really do feel that with you. I don't know if you feel that with me, but I do feel that with you. I'm like, oh, it's like
Yes.
you're
Let
right
me
in
just say
Minnesota.
yes. Yeah.
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 I'm not seeking validation or anything.
I
Being
didn't
a
think
good
you were.
friend.
Just offering it to you.
Yeah. But I
Yep.
have a few friends in my life where I'm like, man, it's like we were literally just together. And that's what I think can help you understand that there is no such thing as space and time when you're truly like in a loving relationship. And we're not talking like intimacy, but you can have this type of love in friendships. But I think it's important to consider that if you are in a space of your life where you're making a transition, and I teach this in Project Lioness, the layers of sharing, hold your share sacred. And you don't need to share with everyone because the truth is you may have people who can hold it and say, hey, I see you, right? And you don't need to give advice. Half the time people don't need fucking advice. They just need to be witnessed for their wholeness to like be fully expressed. But I think we live in a culture of like advice dumping because we want to feel important in the advice giving. So
Mm,
number one, consider if you're in a transition yourself and you really need just to be seen and heard, consider who you share that with. And what do you need? And as I'm hearing you share, Alex, you listen to your body like so much of the time. And I know that doesn't come over time. You've put a lot of work into like trusting your somatic cues. But when you can listen to the feedback loop of your physiology, it doesn't have to become so catastrophic to the point where you destroy your life. And I say, like, if you don't listen to like the tap on the shoulder, the semi truck is only a couple doors down. That's going to like smack you upside the head and say, yo, you got to listen to this. But my point coming back to the friendship thing, is if you're in a space of transition and you feel like you need to share with someone, consider like, who are those sacred connections that you have that you can just share and be seen and heard and witnessed and not feel like you need advice or you need therapy, but just be seen, because that is such a powerful, potent energy to hold for someone, to be like, oh, wait, I just expressed some truth and there's nothing, like, there's no data coming back at me. And I can just like really sink into that. And my nervous system can recalibrate into a space of like, oh, wow, it feels good to just like express and not have anything coming back in my face. Because we've all had those people where we share something and then it ends up in someone else's ears and you're like, man, like the sacred trust was just lost. And I guess I'm up to like creating different relationships where it's like, yo, yeah, I've got you. You don't need any advice. I trust you're intelligent, you're smart, you will find your way. If you want support, let me know. If you want feedback, let me know. And even asking permission, like, do you want feedback on that? Yes or no? Because sometimes your brain is not in a space to receive feedback. And I can imagine like being a mom, working through a business transition, working, getting closer in your relationship, like half the time, I'm sure as a mom, there's like unnecessary advice, unsolicited advice that's just dumped on you all the fucking time.
It's such an important point that you made about witnessing and having people in your life to witness you. And I know there are so many people that don't have that.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important to have, like a chiropractor or a coach, or because sometimes it's people that there's an exchange where, you're paying them, but that's the exchange, right? Because they're teaching you
Yeah,
how to develop those relationships in your life.
absolutely.
And it's so important to have at least one person. And sometimes we didn't grow up knowing how to do that, so like my parents, I remember telling actually every single member of my family that I was going to do this, and every single one of them came back with, but you built that from scratch, you're just going to give it up, you're just going to close it, like disbelief, right, judgment of like, I don't know about that, what are you going to do, what are you going to do if you're not doing that, and the support was there, but the knee jerk, the reaction, right there, here it is, there was a reaction, period. We
Yep.
need the people that there's not, that's how you know if it's the right person that you're talking to.
Absolutely. The feedback. You
There's,
need the
yes, the
feedback of like,
feedback.
oh, that's your
Yeah.
shit coming up, not mine.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm
Yes.
solid in my decision, but
Mm-hmm.
anytime we share something that's perhaps outside of someone's values, we filter it, the data, through our own perception of reality. And it's like, but did you waste your time? It's like, well, is it really wasted if you got lessons and you just take those lessons and
Yeah.
implement it in a different way? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Then it's not wasted.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, it's a lot of a lot of data like that. And I guess it is a lot of somatic data. The numbers didn't really matter. The numbers weren't good. I guess I'll just say that. Like my practice became what I like to call an expensive hobby, where it was like, I'm just working to kind of break even, like because I don't want to. I know I have proven to myself that I could 100% make a beautiful living out of doing this. I know that in my being. I have proven that to myself. I don't want to.
That's it.
This is all I'm showing up for. This is all I got. And it sucks. It sucks for everybody because I'm sure on some level too, my patients know, you
Yep.
know,
Even subconsciously.
even subconsciously. And I think too, it took me a long time to get to that place. And I stayed the longest for my patients
Yes.
because I would be having these interactions of magnificent healing, miracles, just, Mel. I mean, we
Hmm.
get to save lives. Like we play very important roles in people's lives. And I never take that for granted. And so that was by far the hardest part of leaving because again, I had to really work out what it looked like to provide that kind of service in a different form.
Yes. Yes.
And the day came where I had a patient interaction. We were wrapping up her care. She was on the other side of all this stuff that, we had been working on. And we were doing her reevaluation, looking at her, her nervous system scans, and she just started crying, but it was out of gratitude. It wasn't, and she was one that I was nervous about. She was scared when I closed, but she was also on the other side, and it was gratitude of just the work we had done. And I realized I didn't feel guilt. I also felt gratitude. I felt
Oof.
like the chapter, that's it. That's the end. I closed it. I wrote the end. This is it. I feel so good
Mm,
about this. And and it was cool because she didn't know it, but what she affirmed to me was, you're not just a chiropractor. I don't come here just for that. I come here for X, Y, and Z, right? And just relating other skills that I use, that I have, that I can use anywhere for
yeah.
anything. And so I'm very grateful to that. And then actually recently I got a DM on Instagram from her giving me a wrap up, letting me know how awesome she's doing, and it's been like 6 months. And I was just like, that's great. Of course you are. Of course you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did serious work, and she did the work. So,
I'm getting like kind of teary-eyed just like hearing you share this. And
oh,
I remember you in Project Lioness, maybe in one of our one-on-one calls, you sharing that text. And I was
yeah.
like, you've transcended the role and actually just embodied your soul.
Mm,
And that you can serve people in any form, in any place, and go from one to one to one to many, which is I know what you were doing with Clay is you guys are helping so many fucking chiropractors and so many
mm,
service providers be fulfilled. And like I don't know, it's just, I'm just getting this reflection back from you, like really owning the transcendence of like, oh, I don't have to regret this closing of this chapter. I don't have to fear completion. I can just see it as like on the way and into my
mm,
next expansion and evolution of my ability to serve at an even greater capacity because
mm,
nothing's missing, right? And it's like so cool to see you go from that to now like one to many. Like you're still serving people
right.
in chiropractic and honestly different forms of healing and entrepreneurship because I know you guys work with more than just chiropractors. And when you think about it, if you help other chiropractors and coaches be successful, you're still impacting patients and you're still
Right.
impacting practice members in such a different way, but it's still there. And I think
Yeah.
that's what people get stuck on is like, I can't quit or I can't pivot. There's no such thing as quitting. It's like you've got to pivot. And when you can see your ability to serve in another form, you don't attach yourself to this way and you just evolve, right? Like we are alchemy. Like this is metamorphosis. We are meant to expand, we are meant to evolve, we are meant to grow. And if you simultaneously, if you love being in practice, like fuck yeah. Like we need more people doing well in private practice. We need more people doing well. This is me projecting a little bit, but part of my mission and vision at least is to serve healers, leaders, and entrepreneurs to allow them to live a fulfilled life and do what it is they love. And if that means you rock a brick and mortar for 40 years, hell yeah, be that sacred sanctuary in your community. But anyway, I'm just like having a moment. I'm like, dude, you fucking transcended, girl.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that reflection. I receive it. And you're right. Being in practice in 40 years, that still involves expansion and pivoting, because more than likely, if you're in practice and you're helping that many people and you're that successful, you're going to have to assume a different role, or you're going to have to
Absolutely.
hire people to have different roles. You
Absolutely.
have to expand and you have to transcend, if it, and hopefully if you like being the person, the hands-on person, fantastic. You're going to have to hire people to fulfill all the other roles because you're going to have so many people to help.
And some people, their top priority is specifically hands-on. It's not the computer stuff. It's not
Hmm.
the marketing. That's why you hire someone like Clay and
Hmm.
Alex. It's not those other things because you're one person. And when you can live into your zone of genius, and I was going to speak to this as this is reminding me, When you can live in your zone of genius and live into your top priorities, you actually don't get that chihuahua energy. It
Mm-hmm.
can,
Mm-hmm.
from the outside, it can look like you're really busy because you're fulfilling a lot, but you're actually using much less energy because your brain is operating from a much more coherent, balanced state. So you're not on this sympathetic overdrive of like, and that's why I like calling it Project Lioness, because if you think of a lioness just like chilling, they're just like, I'm going to hunt when I want to hunt. I'm going to nap when I want to nap. And I'm going to conserve my energy and be poised about it and confident. But like when you're in alignment with your values and you live into your top priorities, whatever that is for you, you've got to determine that. You actually are way more efficient at using energy and you stay in your higher brain versus dipping into your sympathetic, dipping into your brainstem, dipping into your amygdala, which requires a lot of energy to just like get through the day, which is why some people get one thing done and they're fucking exhausted because they're actually not really inspired by it.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you're fulfilled and inspired, you can accomplish with a lot less effort in one day more than people can do in 30 days. And that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean you're doing more. It means you're actually being more. And
Mm.
you're living in the law of magnetism versus desperation. So anyway, I just wanted to speak to some of that you're sharing because it's important to consider to keep checking yourself. And it is a natural law of nature to expand. You see the trees out there? They're reaching for the sky. Okay?
Yep.
They're like fucking storm, winter, boop, boop, boop. They're expanding. And guess what? As much as you expand out, you've got to expand inward. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
grow your roots internally, right? Expanding is not the hierarchy of chasing success. It's living a fulfilled life and expanding into all those parts of you that you're still learning to love.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
digress.
I love it.
Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.